I think we also need to understand what cortisol actually is.
Yes.
Because I think it's quite a confusing, and again, it is a neurochemical, a hormone that gets demonized. It's often considered to be really bad.
Yeah.
So, when we go into that sort of fight or flight response, it is necessary that we release adrenaline and cortisol.
Yes.
It's fundamental in helping us move out of scenarios. The problem with chronic stress, and again, this is what, it might be that it's not that you are going through the death of a person. What you might be going through is minor stresses all the time. So what you don't have is you don't have any baseline anymore. So you don't have the ability to sort of regulate those stress hormones overall. Now, when you look at the marriage of hormones, is that cortisol kind of needs an energy source, and insulin will kind of step in and help to kind of support that process.
Yeah.
But that's a real problem in itself as well. And that's when that sort of insulin resistance happens over time.
Welcome to Thriving in Menopause, brought to you by Prevention Magazine. I'm Zoe Mernier, the editor of Prevention. Today, we're joined by one of Australia's most respected voices in health, clinical nutritionist, author and Wellco educator, Zoe Bingley-Pullen. Yes, another Zoe. Zoe, thanks for joining us today.
Who doesn't want a bit more life?
That's it. Our name means life. That's right. Now, despite being in the wellness space, Zoe was completely taken by surprise when she was told she was undergoing early menopause at the age of 39. Rather than simply pushing through, Zoe immersed herself in the science of hormones, nutrition and healthy aging, determined to better understand what was happening to her body and how women can support themselves through this transition. So in this episode, we unpack why nurturing our body through menopause is especially crucial for women going through early menopause. She'll also share how all of us can support our hormones in a way that feels achievable even when life gets incredibly busy. So let's dive in. So Zoe, tell us about what was going on in your life when you discovered that you were going into early perimenopause.
Look, I was 39 when I knew that something wasn't right, and what had happened is that I'd done 6 years of IVF to have my little girl Emily, who's now 12, very hormonal. For everybody out there, I have no period and my daughter's about to get her period. It's a very interesting scenario. It's an interesting household. Sorry, Em. But what it was is that I had kind of, I battled this sort of struggle for fertility for a long time. I'd had my daughter. I was like, oh my God, life, I sort of ticked the boxes. And then we decided to kind of go down the pathway of having another child. So this was 2 years later. Now, look, everything was kind of okay. And I wasn't quite sure. I knew something wasn't quite right within my body, but I was fatigued. I was, although I work in the health industry, I was burning the candle at both ends. I had the peak of my career. I always find that's an interesting thing. I still think my career's at its peak, by the way. But I think when we look, it's a long peak. But when we look at sort of that time management component, I was really stretched. And I had gone to see my IVF doctor. Now, look, I'd gone and done all the requirements, the scans, the bloods to look at it. I was just very taken back by what she said to me. So she sat me down and she basically said, look, the reality is, Zoe, you've got a 2% chance of falling pregnant. And I was like, hold on, what's going on? She said, because you're perimenopausal. Now, you would think with all my professional hats, I would know what the hell she was talking about. Now, I knew it was a very loose term that had been thrown around. It wasn't sort of a common terminology when we talked about sort of that lead up to the loss of period.
Yeah.
And when I sort of started to delve a little deeper into it, I was like, oh my God, I am a textbook case study of someone who's had those symptoms. What was also really interesting for me at the time is I'd previously had Ross River virus, and I'd seen the top viral specialist, and he said, wow, this is one of the worst cases of Ross River virus. Now, if you look at the symptoms, they're almost exactly the same as perimenopause. Now, what I currently know now is my symptoms were perimenopause more than they were Ross River virus.
Right.
I didn't really know what to do. It felt like sort of that similar scenario when I found out I couldn't have a baby. I was thinking, oh my God, I wanted to scream, I wanted to swear. I think it's just so unfair.
Yeah.
It is so unfair. I'm meant to have all the tools. I'm meant to have more knowledge than the average person. I just didn't even see this coming as well. I decided to unpack and just unravel what this kind of world of hormones was all about, because I had known the fertility world of hormones, but I certainly didn't know enough about the perimenopausal, menopausal and postmenopausal world. So hence spent the next 2 years really sort of delving into it, wrote a book about it, and then was lucky enough to kind of come on and work with brilliant, amazing products like Wellco and just kind of come on as their educator as well.
Yeah.
So it's definitely been a ride. I'm now right at the other end. I'm just turned, 48. I haven't had a period for a year. I can honestly say it's been a great journey on this second half because I had expectation. I knew how to manage it.
Let's just go back to those symptoms, as you said. They were similar to the symptoms of Ross River virus. So how were they manifesting for you? Are we talking fatigue?
Absolutely. So I had anxiety. At this point in time, I didn't have the brain fog part of it, which was quite interesting. Ross River virus definitely slowed me down. I'm neurodiverse. I've got ADHD and dyslexia. So for me, my brain was pretty fast as it was.
Yeah.
So my husband and I have a good laugh. We're like, well, your just brain became the pace of everybody else.
Neurotypical.
Neuronormal. So I actually kind of relished in some of those symptoms, which was really quite strange. But I really, I was putting on weight, abdominally weight. I was had joint swelling as well, which is definitely, the Ross River part of it. But there was kind of the icing on the cake was the hormonal fluctuations that I was having. I was going from being horny to being, crying. It was just, it was a ride. It was a ride as well.
Classic roller coaster,
Classic roller coaster of hormones. Yay.
All right. So, I think, do you think a lot of women go through that whole thing of thinking, putting it down to, in your case, probably not many think it's the Ross River virus, but they put it down to other things. They put it down to stress.
Absolutely.
They put it down to motherhood. And they don't realise that hormones are at play.
Absolutely, Zoe. Unless you actually have had that baseline, previously, you don't really know what's going on from a pathology point of view. So I would never see a client without having some sort of pathology. So then we can really ascertain what is actually happening. Where are these fluctuations? Sometimes hormones, particularly in that perimenopausal phase, because there's not a test for perimenopause.
Yes, that's right.
So what we need to look at then, we need to look a little bit deeper at the personal journey that you're going on. So I really always say to my clients, please keep some kind of journal because your symptom and your symptom and your symptom is going to be slightly different and your normal is going to be slightly different. You might have had a rocky road with hormones your entire life. Yeah. So for you, when these other sort of fluctuations, you might just put them down to, well, that's just because I've had infrequent periods all my life. I've always got, constipation the 2 weeks before my period because of my progesterone's changing. I might find that my ovulations are painful. So you really need to know what is your normal. There's power in your own personal knowledge. So journaling as much as you can, keeping as much personal history as much as you can. The other thing also is I always think it's good to sort of build that team around you. Because again, whether it be your friend team, whether it be your clinician team, because they're going to also know what is your health normal and what is your not health normal.
Absolutely, because I think the problem often is we're all so busy, we're in our head getting through the day that we're not actually taking that moment to just go, how am I feeling? What am I? What am I? We're just kind of dealing with an issue as it comes up without kind of looking at it, as in a holistic fashion. The good thing is there's lots of really good apps out there that can support you. Yes. So I think, really lean on some of these apps. I think we have data fatigue, to be really honest.
Sure, I think we're over-dated. And sometimes what that does, it removes a level of intuition. So, use the data tools that are going to be beneficial, that can actually give you the correct, not the ones that are going to punish you and make you work harder or make you feel like you're inadequate in what that perfect picture of what health actually looks like.
Absolutely. I guess another thing about perimenopause, it can be very isolating at the best of times. So can you talk about why it can be especially isolating for women in their sort of, mid to late 30s, early 40s?
Look, I think we also go through, with the fluctuation of hormones, we go through levels of anxiety and depression. And that because we are with estrogen levels and progesterone levels and testosterone levels, which are core anti-inflammatories, but also they're big regulators of other neurochemicals like your serotonin and those dopamine type of happy kind of neurochemicals. They fluctuate so much. So, depression is isolating. I've gone through it personally. It's something that often will bring up a lot of just shame around sort of previous things that might have happened in your life. And particularly also because this is a new foray, this is a new world that we're going into with women. My mother wasn't talking about this. No. I watched her go through hell, and we just actually would say, oh God, Mum's just losing her beep, that's often what we would say. Not realising that what she was going through was horrendous, perimenopause and menopause, and just, was using alcohol as a coping mechanism because she didn't know how else to cope.
And didn't know what she was going through either.
She didn't understand it. And obviously, with that research coming out in the 2000s, basically, linking which is obviously we now know incorrect,
Yes.
to cancers and tumours and heart disease, she had pulled herself off HRT. So, that sort of little safety net that was there for her was then gone as well.
Yeah.
I think it's very isolating because, again, we're trying to work this whole world out. I find it less isolating just to kind of maybe pull back a little bit on what your statement was, because I think, when I talk to my clients and my friends, they have found that team, like I was referring to before.
Yeah.
They have got a girlfriend or a friend that they can go, look, what I'm going through this, and they'll go, geez, I'm also going through this.
Yeah.
This is what I've done.
Yeah.
This is the supplement I've tried. This is the foundations I've put into place. This is my psychologist, my hypnotherapist, my kinesiologist, whatever it might be. And so you go, I'll give that a go. But also there's a lot of free services out there that we don't really realise. So we've got to kind of lean on some of those services as well. I've got a girlfriend of mine who even speaks to Lifeline. She's actually rung up because she was so bad in her depression. So there is support out there as well. Don't make this your own journey. Lean on people, because I think, we share such a wealth of information when we are working as a team.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, you've spoken about the long-term risks of not supporting our bodies properly through this transition, including muscle loss, cognitive decline, bone density issues. I mean, what should women understand about that? I mean, and especially if they are going through early perimenopause, it kind of increases those risks to a degree,
you have an increased risk of heart disease from about 40 onwards, and this is the change of sort of protective things like estrogen and testosterone that protect joint, ligament, heart health, collagen, elastin. So, it's really, really important.
Yeah.
So we need to really sort of tip on things like, obviously, a good lifestyle choices. We need rich antioxidant, resveratrol, RN, just things that basically are going to help to support what we call free radical damage. So that's when our body gets stressed. We release, basically negative elements that basically go to sort of scavenge and cause damage within the cells.
Yeah.
What we need is these antioxidants. They're scavengers. They help to clean up that whole entire cycle for you as well. Bone density is another element as well. Most of us have not actually had a bone density test.
Right,
So
exactly.
it's very, very important. You need to know, because we are looking at things like osteopenia and osteoporosis happening in women as young as 30. And this is because of poor lifestyle choices, wrong supplements that they've been taking, the wrong kind of calcium if they are taking a calcium supplement. When we look at calcium, there's calcium and there's calcium. So we need to be getting the best quality calcium. We also need to make sure they've got things like D3, K3, so D vitamins and your K vitamins in there as well, because what they help to do is stop that reabsorption of calcium from the bones back into the system.
Right.
So again, it's really important that we're looking at the quality of the products that we're consuming again. And also, heart health is just so, heart health is, heart attacks are actually over the age of 40 are on one of the biggest increases in women. So we do need to actually look at sort of ways that we can actually support heart health as well. And not to forget, oh my God, brain fog. There's no one that I don't know who hasn't had some sort of brain fog happen to them. And again, that all comes down to the quality of the B vitamins that we're taking.
Right.
B12 is really, really important as well. It's also important that, the B qualities that you're looking are sort of methylated, so they're best absorbed as possible as well. But again, the supplements that we need to look at is one element, but we need to look at our diet component as well. It is very, very important that we are looking at the best quality sourced ingredients.
So let's look at that. Let's look at the nutrition side of things. I mean, as a nutritionist, what are some of the biggest mistakes that women tend to make when they hit perimenopause?
So I think often what we tend to do is we start really kind of skipping. We start because we're tired and we're fatigued, so we start missing the good foundation of nutrition.
Worried about the spare tire that's
absolutely.
developing.
So again, we misconstrue weight gain because again, we don't understand sort of what's actually happening. We're more likely to be insulin resistant because again of the increase of sort of fluctuations of cortisol in our diet and adrenaline in our diet, and therefore that has an effect on our insulin.
Yeah.
Now again, the problem with insulin resistance is that you've got these like receptors, these cells, and basically what these cells do is that they release insulin. And what happens with insulin resistance, this cell doesn't communicate as effectively. So what we need is the right kind of minerals. Things like magnesium will actually help, chromium, vitamin C, all of these other nutrients are really, really effective. And what it works is like a lock and key.
Right.
But what we also need to make sure is that we've got the right kind of low glycemic food in our diet. We have beautiful quality protein in our diet as well.
Yeah.
And we have good fats. Now to kind of break it down, because macros are different, slightly different for everybody else. But on average, you're wanting about sort of, 60% of your diet to be coming from good quality sort of carbohydrates. You're wanting around 30% of your diet to coming from sort of, your good quality proteins, and the rest to come from your good fats. So to give you sort of that calculation, so when it comes to protein, I'm 68 kilos. I need 1.5 grams per kilogram of body weight of usable protein. So you've got weight-based protein and you have usable protein. So I'm about 90 grams to 100 grams of usable protein. Right. So to give you an example, you've got a steak around 150 grams, you'll get about 30 grams of usable protein.
Right.
So I always try to explain to my clients the best effect to actually kind of accumulate and get that right to dap it, because you don't just want it in one meal.
Yes.
You want to sort of dap it over the whole entire, pepper it all over the whole day. So I always say if you can actually aim to get around 150 grams of animal protein or vegetarian protein in breakfast, lunch and dinner, you're more likely to get the right amount of protein. The other thing, when it comes to protein is we have complete protein and non-complete protein. So simply what that means is you've got 22 amino acids. 8 of these are essential amino acids that our body doesn't produce, so we have to get them from our diet.
Right.
Now, they are in all animal products, but not all vegetarian products as well. So that's why we say if you are vegan or vegetarian, you can put some really good quality protein powders as an option in there as well. But again, what you need to make sure is that you're being quite diverse in the way that you're consuming your protein. So you've got a little bit of, maybe if you are eating dairy, you might have dairy with some nuts and some grains, or you might have some legumes and some nuts and some plant-based milks in there. Another thing when it comes to carbohydrates, we really need to make sure we have those lovely sort of slow-releasing, complex, low glycemic carbohydrates.
Yeah.
And it's simply, again, because that's going to help to mitigate or reduce the risk of that insulin resistance. So again, exactly like I said, when you eat a carbohydrate, you'll digest that food, the hormone insulin gets released, you start to kind of convert it into glucose and you burn it. Now, that's the ultimate kind of effect.
Yes.
But what for most of us happen is we're either consuming high glycemic or too much carbohydrate. And so the body's working really hard. It's pumping, releasing insulin. And normally what happens, it gets converted into glucose, but we don't burn it, and it gets stored in the liver and converted to fat. And that's that picture of sort of carbohydrate to fat. But what you and I are going to feel is what happens to our blood glucose levels. So we're going to get that increase in blood glucose and then decrease.
The crash.
Now, the problem with that, the good old crash, the problem with that is that when you're going through perimenopause, you've already got a huge amount of fluctuations going on. Yeah. So the extreme feels more extreme. It feels more overwhelming. Now, if you think about cortisol already being at its peak around 9 a.m., most people I know will go and have some sort of sugary, high caffeinated thing as their first kind of consumption of food. Now, what that does is that further increases the insulin. It further increases the stress on the body. So there's more cortisol. So that high, it's like, that fall is so far more. And the problem with that is very hard then to recoup that.
Yes.
And you're starting that process and that's really affecting you throughout.
It carries on throughout the whole day, right?
Throughout the day.
Yeah, absolutely. So what would be the perfect breakfast then?
So the perfect breakfast, I think, again, everyone's slightly different. I mean, we talk about fasting. It's not the best idea for someone who's going through menopause or perimenopause because, like I said before, because we're already going through a huge amount of fluctuation. So what we really want to make sure is that we hydrate, the first thing we do.
Yes.
You can even do things like put some lemon or apple cider vinegar to increase those stomach enzymes, so you're ready to kind of really nourish and start breaking down the food that you're consuming.
Yep.
For some people, they just simply can't eat. So I just even think a little bit of, could be the hydroprotein, or could just be like, I tend to do my greens as my pre-workout. And then I go in and do my workout. Then I have something to eat after that as well. So that works really nicely for me overall. But again, when I get home or when I recommend my clients, it might be a lovely grain sourdough piece of bread, avocado, could be some feta, some hemp seeds, salt and pepper, drizzle with extra virgin olive oil. If you're something who likes sort of more of a sweeter food, you could do a fabulous smoothie. Again, put your chia, your hemp seeds, your low-GI fruit in there as well.
Yeah.
But it's really making sure that breakfast, lunch and dinner have all those 3 macros in it. So a little bit of complex carbohydrates, a little bit of protein and a little bit of good fat. And you pretty much, without having to kind of calculate your macros, although, I lean a lot on AI to help me and my clients do that. So I actually get my clients, rather than them sort of send me a written food diary anymore.
Yep.
I actually get them to sort of recite into AI what they're actually consuming, take photos, and ask them to calculate the macros, and then they send me the results. And then I can actually guide them a little bit better on what's being lost and give them some advice on where we can actually add more into the diet.
So you've talked about protein. We know protein is having a huge moment, but let's continue talking about it, just why it is so important for healthy aging in terms of bones and all that sort of stuff.
Look, it's across the board protein. I mean, if you think about it, every single part of our body is made up of amino acids. So what we need to make sure is that we have the correct building blocks there to support all of those things. But the interesting thing is we have a lot of change happening digestively as well within our body as well. You know, we talk a lot about these GLP-1s, which is, your Ozempic, but what these are neurochemicals that help to release leptin and ghrelin and tell our body actually how to regulate what we're actually eating. And they get affected as we age as well. So those signaling is slightly off. A really good thing to do is when you get a blood test, have a look at your total protein.
Yep.
Because that is an indicator of how you're absorbing and using your protein. For a lot of women, I find that is actually starts to decrease. So this is why we often need to increase that absorption quality within the gut. So we need to make sure that the products, whether it be Supralix or things that are pre or probiotic, is actually there supporting that gut lining, decreasing the inflammation, because those lovely anti-inflammatory hormones are declining. They are going. So again, this doesn't just happen, it doesn't affect just one part of our body. It is everywhere in our body that we are potentially becoming more inflamed, including our gut, which there could affect how we are absorbing the food that we're eating. So it's really important that we are getting the best quality types of proteins and foods all around, but it's also really important that we have enough protein, and this is why we tend to increase that overall consumption.
Absolutely. I found I had a blood test, and I mean, I wasn't religiously checking, but I had the opinion that I ate plenty of protein, but sure enough, I wasn't.
I think so. It's really interesting because, I mean, it gets a little confusing for a lot of people. They think, oh, great, so I'm just going to have like more steak and what have you. That's not necessarily the case. What I often see is that people are not being consistent enough.
Right.
That's what it more comes down to, is that we are having inconsistency in the way that we're eating. And that can be a lot of the time because of these lifestyle situations. Put your hand up, everyone out there, if you are this person, 40 and over, young children, an aging parent as well, and a stressed job. Now, forget if you don't have children, but most of us have an aging parent. So this is the thing, these things, they pull you in every situation. What often suffers? Your health.
Yep.
Okay, so I talk a lot to my clients about habit stacking, and it's a really, I was actually in the car with Emily talking about it. I said, darling, have you heard of the term habit stacking? And she's like, no. I said, it's a really, really good way to do things, because I've recently gone back to meditating, doing Vedic or transcendental meditating twice a day. Now, for me, it's the cumulative nature. So she's like, Mummy, how long are you doing this for? I said, well, 66 days, and then I'm adding another 299.
Yeah.
And so what it is, that's not one version of habit stacking, but that's a realistic objective.
Yes.
So I'm looking realistically at what is, I'm not going, this is 365 days. What I'm doing is I'm breaking it down in components that are actually edible and doable and tangible and things that I can actually reward myself with.
Yeah.
But what I actually then explained to her, I said, what's really interesting about it, I'm using an app, Insight Timer, on top of that. Not that I'm associated to Insight Timer, it's just a good app. Now, within that app, there's a timer. But within that, there's a journal. So when I finish my app, because I hate journaling, it actually, and I said to Emily, it just seemed like a waste of time to me. But it is the clearest and most concise way for me to know what's actually going on in my life and in my brain and in my heart.
Yeah.
But the good thing about this particular app, as you finish it, you go finish, and then it goes, how do you feel today? And I just speak into this, and I go, well, I'm really feeling blah, 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 blah. And then it goes, what's your intention? And I set an intention.
Yes.
So I've just habit stacked. And it was really effortless to actually do that as well. And I explained to her, it doesn't have to be this overwhelming thing. But again, I always try and do exactly that with my clients. So we don't start with, this perfect lifestyle, this perfect diet. What we do is we find the 3 versions of Zoe, because again, you're going to have a work Zoe, you're going to have a weekend Zoe, and you might have let's get crazy Zoe, or whatever it might be, right? So whatever it is. And what you want is habits and routines to all of these scenarios.
Absolutely.
So, we'll look at this lifestyle and we'll go, well, what can we put into place? Let's just put this. And then a couple of weeks later, we'll put that. And then we look at this lifestyle and we do the same. So what you have is a very malleable doable lifestyle that, you know, if you're kind of going out, you go, well, I need to put X, Y, and Z into play.
Yeah.
And I need to have X, Y, and Z in the fridge when I get home.
Yeah.
And I can then tomorrow do X, Y, and Z. So you've got these options for that lifestyle.
Yeah.
Same again, when you're working crazy, you've got, okay, well, I can do this, and I've got these supplements sitting there, and I've got this support sitting there.
Absolutely.
And it's a lot more realistic. The other thing also that I've learnt to accept and love about myself is my neurology and the words in my head and the positive and negative words, because again, I think we have this over assumption that we've always got to say positive things. That is a lot of BS. We do not always say positive things, but what you need to accept is the negative part of you too. So the old psychology, you know, in me would actually be pushing that emotion away. I do quite the opposite now. I make space for that emotion.
Right.
So I let it come in and I go, hey, what are you doing, anxiety? It's so nice to see you again. We're friends, aren't we? And I give it a little hug. And I go, all right, well, here you are. Here you are again. Here you are
Showing
again.
up again.
You're here again. All right. Let's get on with it then.
Yeah.
And I think that in itself has stopped demonising these thoughts for me
Right.
personally. And I often will intertwine these skill sets into when I work with my clients, whether it be some psychotherapy, some unhooking, and just sitting at peace with these and not trying to battle them, the versions of ourselves.
So along those lines, what roles do stress and cortisol, what roles do they play in hormonal symptoms?
Yeah.
And I mean, just how much of an impact does chronic stress, which, you know,
Oh.
so many of us are under, have on the body during this stage?
I mean, it is huge. I mean, like we said before, we already have such a huge amount of fluctuations happening as well. I think we also need to understand what cortisol actually is.
Yes.
Because I think it's quite a confusing, and again, it is a neurochemical, a hormone that gets demonized. It's often considered to be really bad.
Yeah.
So, you know, when we go into that sort of fight or flight response, it is necessary that we release adrenaline and cortisol.
Yes.
It's fundamental in helping us move out of scenarios. The problem with chronic stress, and again, this is what, you know, it might be that it's not that you are going through the death of a person. What you might be going through is minor stresses all the time. So what you
Yes.
don't have is you don't have any baseline anymore. So you don't have the ability to sort of regulate those stress hormones overall. Now, when you look at the marriage of hormones, is that cortisol kind of needs an energy source, and insulin will kind of step in and help to kind of support that process.
Yeah.
But that's a real problem in itself as well. And that's when that sort of insulin resistance happens over time as well. And that's when that visceral fat starts. And again, as we know, you know, these organs are, you know, they're pivotal in keeping us healthy.
Yeah.
So again, we are more likely then to kind of increase with weight gain, increased body fat, you know, inflammation, heart conditions. And again, then what does that affect? Bone density, because often you exercise less. You then find that you're more likely to fracture. So it's a bit of a slippery slide of what is going. So getting on top of your stress is paramount. But the other thing also, let's look at like the mechanisms. Let's look at how this is actually made. So you have something called your steroid cascade. Right at the top of it is something called DHEA, which is a neurochemical.
Yes.
And then what we have is we have these androgens. So we have progesterone, testosterone, estrogen. And on the other side, we have adrenaline and cortisol and noradrenaline. So what's really interesting is that we need to make sure that this beautiful DHEA up here is supported. But when you are producing, let's say for example, when we get ovarian decline, you know, I mean, I recently had an ovary removed. It was a bit of a cancer scare. It was all fine, but again, it just meant that it sort of rocketed me. That was about a year ago, and that sort of rocketed me faster into menopause. So what I really needed to make sure is these secondary organs that can produce estrogen and testosterone, and that's your adrenal glands. So it is even more important when we go through these periods of time, we have this decline happening. We need to support these other mechanisms that can actually produce these hormones as well. All right. So it's not just for the pure stress, you know, that we're under. We need to get, you know, support our adrenals as well. So lifestyle is really important. I mean, I drench myself in magnesium. I love the Wellco longevity product, again, because it's really got some good quality bisglycinate. So there's magnesium and there's magnesium. It's really important that we know the difference. So basically, glycinate form of magnesium, what happens, you have two glycine molecules, and what they do is they bind with the magnesium to take through the gut barrier. So it's what we call more bioavailable. So it just means you're going to get more bang for your buck. You're going to get more magnesium. Now, what the purpose of magnesium, it works on a central nervous system. It calms us down. It's an antispasmodic, so it calms your muscles down. But it's in 300 functions, more than 300 functions within the body as well. It's what builds hormones. So again, you know, it's really important that we have a good source of this magnesium in our diet through the food that we're eating, on top of the supplements that we're taking as well.
Absolutely. Yes, magnesium.
Magnesium.
It's pretty magical. There are particular lifestyle habits that really that women often underestimate when it comes to hormone health. So things like movement, recovery, sleep, all of those.
Oh, I mean, you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
There is nothing that increases our neurochemicals faster than movement.
Yeah.
So exercise. So exercise is not only an incredible way to help to work with these endorphins and these neurochemicals, but also it's improved bone density. So again, things like jumping and those sort of explosive type exercises actually create something called blasticity. So what that is the building of bone. So it's really important that we are doing those impact type exercises. It's also, I mean, exercise is community. I think, if you look at the world that we're in, people aren't drinking as much. It's fantastic. I mean, I've just recently stopped drinking. I've gone through a year of stop, start, and now I'm just like, I think I'm done with this for a while.
Yeah.
And again, but, if you look at Australia as a whole, we're very intertwined around alcohol. So I've really lent on my exercise community. So again, there's that component, exercise and movement. Again, it's done for strength, it's done for stress release, it's done for community. Sleep is, oh my God, melatonin starts to decrease from about age sort of 35, 40. So what that means is that melatonin is the neurochemical. It's a peptide hormone. What the whole point of it is that basically it releases the message to tell you to go to sleep. It's not necessarily what's going to keep you asleep. Magnesium is what's going to keep you asleep, and good sleep hygiene and good sleep habits.
Yep.
But again, what we do need to do is we need to build on what supports us into sleep as well. I often explain to clients, sleep doesn't happen at 6 o'clock in the evening. Sleep happens at 6 a.m. It's the things you do first thing in the morning that works you towards those good sleep qualities as well. Naturally, as we said, you've got your cortisol awake cycle, so it's called CAR, and basically that will cycle up and down. But you also have the same thing with melatonin. So it's understanding that they almost work in opposition to each other.
Right.
If you've got more cortisol, that simply suppresses the melatonin side of things. That's another good reason why we need to work on our cortisol levels, just so that melatonin can be heard, can be responded to. Those messages can be received effectively overall. But I always say to clients, if you can start around sort of 2 o'clock looking at your sleep, just putting a couple of things into place. I mean, for some people, that's a no-no with caffeine.
Yeah.
But the other thing also is that your serotonin levels and your cortisol levels, they all start to plummet out around 2, 3 o'clock. And that's often when we start with a high-sugared food, a cup of coffee. You start thinking about that wine, and you start sort of justifying these things. I find timing's really critical in this. And if you know your routine, and the best way to keep this is a food diary, a food journal of some sort. So it's really important that we ask around 2:15, having some sort of really good quality snack, because what that will actually do is that will actually help to slowly pick up your serotonin, decrease your cortisol, increase, your natural kind of, awake cycles as well. And then that helps us then later in that evening or later in that afternoon to not be reaching for the wrong types of things as well. So it's starting, remember that sleep starts, first thing in the morning, but really critically, if you're looking at it around 2 o'clock to kind of see what your sleep cycle will be later on, it's going to be really, really effective as well. All the majority of your replenishing and your reappropriating, your liver, your kidney, all that all kind of happens at its peak around the evening. And that's not because it's designed that way, but it's also because when you've got the least amount of intrusions, you're not eating, you're at rest, your body can sit in and do, that autophagy can start kind of clearing everything out and appropriating what it's supposed to do overall. So sleep is so important. I think also don't stress if you can't sleep. I know that sounds I mean, I woke up at 12:30 last night and to go back to 2:30. I didn't worry about it. I don't worry about it anymore. I get up. I don't sit there like this like I used to when I was younger. I get up, try to force it out. I actually, not that I'm, obviously I love the Wellco products, but I did go down and have my evening elixir because I have routines that I've put into place. I've also got a beautiful sleep tea that I've got. So I have routines and I have little kind of hacks that I know will support the process. And just the mechanisms of sleep and relaxation. I do find for me meditation's critical because those hours that I've lost, I can actually make up through meditation. So, that 20-minute meditation is equivalent to an hour to 2 hours of sleep.
Yes, exactly. So you've talked about some of your routines and hacks. So let's just talk us through briefly what a perfect Zoe day would look like for you.
Well, my daughter and my husband being nice to me. No,
yes, It does help.
No, so look, I mean, I am an avid exerciser. I love exercising, and I learned a long time that I don't exercise for my physiology, although that's a wonderful added bonus. I exercise mentally. So for me, I get up, I do my little 20-minute meditation. I then get up, I do all my morning elixirs. I do, whether it be my protein powders or my greens that I'm putting in there as well. And I also do a cold pressed juice every morning as well. So that's, I pre-make that.
Yep.
So that's ready to go. It's a great way to get additional fiber as well as, enzymes and vitamins in my diet. So that's kind of like my pre-workout drink.
Yep.
I then go and exercise, whether it be a 40-minute walk, an hour walk, or my hot yoga that I do, or my weights class that I might be doing. It tends to be 5 to 6 days a week I'm doing something though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really love it. I love it. I get a bit of joy. I get some fabulous neurochemicals. Then I come home. My daughter's normally ready to go for school, and I'll make her and I breakfast. So it could be something like a beautiful sourdough piece, googie eggs, eggs and soldiers. I'll either make a protein smoothie as well. It tends to be when I'm more on the run, so I've got to get out quickly.
Yeah.
So then I can have that in the car, get dressed and get out the door as well. I'm relatively organised, so I've always got a piece of fruit or a little bag of nuts or something in my bag or in my car, and I've always got a bottle of water. Always, without a doubt. I've always got my water with me. Lunchtime tends to be, if it's something like I'm in wintertime, I'm a real sort of stewy soup type person as well. But I do make sure it's always got some kind of protein in it. So whether it be an animal protein or my beans in there as well, or it could be a dollop of yogurt in there with some hemp seeds. There's always some sort of protein coming into that particular meal overall. I also find that I'm often leaning towards a lot of things like bone broth. So I might just have a cup. If I'm not super hungry, it might be that I have a hard-boiled egg, some veggie sticks and a bone broth. So something really quick, and that's something, again, that I can have relatively quickly and on the run. I eat out probably about 3 nights a week. I love eating out. I live in Bondi. I live in Sydney. There's pretty good options. I've got a great little fishmonger around the corner for me, so I tend to kind of lean on a lot of sort of fish in my diet. I'm very careful now, sadly, about what fish I do eat. Nothing farmed, as much wild caught, as much oily as I can possibly get in my diet as well. If I'm eating red meat, it's all grass-fed red meat as well. You can buy these at Woolies and Coles now. The good thing about something like that is that rather than eating a 200-gram an average piece of meat, if I eat a 100-gram piece of grass-fed meat, I actually get not the equivalent source of nutrition, but I'm actually getting better nutrition in that better source of meat as well. So there are ways to eat, as healthily as you possibly can. Yeah. As cost effective as you possibly can as well. Whether you're going out, I love going to all the farmers markets. It's the culture I love. I love tour. I learned so much, as a trained chef, I learned so much from the providors, from the growers, and they're always teaching me about, that purple cauliflower, what do I do with it? And they'll give me tips. So lean on that, you can really get a lot of good insight and good information by asking the providors what is in season and how do you actually use it as well. And then at night time, I don't have a sweet tooth. Fortunately, I have a cheese tooth.
Fortunately. Okay.
I have a cheese tooth, right?
That must be another Zoe thing.
Is it? Yeah, okay. So look, I tend to, if I need a little snack afterwards, it'll be a savoury kind of snack as well. It could be like I said, it could be like a little slice of cheese. Or it could be some, good quality peanut butter on like a celery stick or apple or something like that, and a tea, and my evening elixir. And that's kind of my perfect day. Like I said, that world of alcohol's left me. I lean a lot on things like heaps normal beers and like the alcohol-free beers. I haven't yet found a good alcohol-free wine. So if anyone knows any, I haven't drunk wine for a long time because again, I found hormonally it impacted me the most because of the sugar contents. Unfortunately, in Australia also, we tend to have more preservatives in our wine and a higher alcohol content as well. So that is the other reason why our liver is being compromised through age. So it's important that we actually, try and remove some of those toxic foods out of our diet, or we support that through good nutrition and good, supplementation to help support that process.
Yeah. Okay, so overall, what would be your final message to a woman, just the most important thing that you want people to know?
I think the most important thing for women is you're not alone. Lean on your support. There are so many women going through this, and there's so many partners that are supporting us, male or female, through this process as well. There's a lot of amazing apps, websites out there as well. So try and do that little bit of research as well. Use AI to maybe potentially give that research. And please just choose good quality nutrition, good quality supplements, because again, they are the cornerstone. They are the building blocks. That is what's going to make you go from feeling average to feeling healthy a lot quicker.
Yeah, to thriving in menopause.
Yeah, why not? The other thing also, the last thing I will say to people, don't be scared about this process. I think the more we know about this, the less we're going to sort of demonize what this actually is. As we get, that wisdom, we're going to celebrate this soon. We will.
Yeah.
I love not having my period. I wear white swimming costumes again.
I love it.
So there is a lot more that we can benefit from, particularly when we manage these symptoms.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Zoe, for sharing those insights today. Now, if you couldn't get quite enough of Zoe, she's got some exciting news later in the year.
Yes.
What's happening? Tell us.
So I've got a new book coming out in September. It's all about longevity. So it's perfectly timed again. But again, I do have my other gorgeous books out there, Eat Your Way to Healthy Hormones. And you can follow me on social media, which is Zoe Bingley-Pullen.
Lovely. Thank you.
Thank you, Zoe.
And for more great advice for living your best life at midlife, don't forget to pick up a copy of Prevention Magazine and, of course, rate, review and subscribe. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.